Frederick Winslow Taylor.
Hardly a competent workman can be found who doesn't devote a considerable amount of time to studying just how slowly he can work and still convince his employers that he's going at a good pace.
Frederick Winslow Taylor was born into a wealthy Philadelphia Quaker family. He was expected to enter Harvard, but his eyesight began to deteriorate. Physicians said a nervous condition could be the cause. They prescribed manual labor. At the Midvale Steelworks, Taylor found his place. He carried out what are today called time and motion studies. His goal was to break a job down to standardized parts, a set of rules. Taylor chose a pig iron gang for this, his most famous study. After watching them work, Taylor redesigned their every motion, instructing them when to start, when to lift, when to walk, and when to stop. Their output went up almost 400%. Taylor called his system scientific management.
The system of scientific management is a magnificent expression of obsessional control. For Taylor, it was a perfect kind of work to enable him to utilize his particular kind of imagination, but it also was a perfect kind of work to enable him to control a lot of neurotic conflicts that affected him all through his life.
Since childhood, Taylor was tormented by a nightmare in which he was imprisoned by a machine. Only by maintaining a fixed position in bed could he escape it and sleep.
He rigged a contraption to supposedly control the sleep problem. The contraption, he laid in bed and he would sleep on it. It was almost like a bed of nails.
The stopwatch, a more subtle control device, remained the key to Taylor's waking hours. Every job was subjected to its scrutiny and standardized. Taylor compiled hundreds of charts and diagrams that specified those standards and the order in which the jobs had to be done. He put all planning into the hands of managers. Workers would only carry out tasks.
The heart of 20th century American technological system is the idea that there is somewhere or other a group of people, a small group of people who design things and control the operation of the system.
Frederick Winslow Taylor.
In the past, man has been first. In the future, the system will be first.
This is Frank Gilbreth, another management specialist. He went beyond the stopwatch. He used film to determine the most efficient movements. He called them thurbligs, his name spelt backwards. Gilbreth also attached lights to workers' hands and photographed their movements at slow shutter speed. The movements left indelible paths. These cyclographic pictures were made into wire models that could be analyzed and redesigned. Scientific management was applied to everything. Control like this is invisible, not confrontational. The system applies the pressure.
It depersonalizes the authority relation. Therefore, people subjectively, psychologically feel as though they're not being controlled, when in point of fact they are by the subjective system.
It's what happens at Wendy's. When an order is placed, it flashes onto screens in the production areas. The restaurant has a single purpose: to get the order to the customer within 15 seconds. The layout of the kitchen is designed for maximum efficiency. Workers on the line take no more than 2 steps in any direction. And to make it work, customers also have their place.
first start to tailorize a job, like at a fast food restaurant, what you're really trying to do is see what everybody did up till now. Take all the skills that they have and sort of siphon them off and put it into the system. You're working very fast. It is a hard job. No one should ever think that this has become simple because it's tailorized. I mean, you do a lot, and you go crazy from the beeps and the buzzers. But you didn't have to know. It's no longer a matter of his intuition.
Intuition has no place here. It's about predictability, the removal of uncertainty. At Wendy's, every order from the cash register is automatically broken down into reports by the corporation's mainframe computer. It allows managers to monitor food sales, per product, per hour. And to manage employees, 80% are part-time. Their hours can be changed on the day.
When we talk about and think about technology, we tend to think of it as something that's in and of itself. We tend to talk about it as somehow being a passive thing. I mean, and I think the important thing is that people make decisions about technologies. They make conscious choices about technologies.
In early 20th century America, immigrants flooded into the country. These newly arrived forced Henry Ford to make conscious choices. Most came from farms and lacked industrial skills. They traveled to cities like Detroit looking for work. In the first decade of the century, most automobile workers were skilled craftsmen. But there weren't enough to produce the number of cars the big manufacturers demanded. Henry Ford was smarter than the rest. He filled his factories with single-purpose machine tools. He tailorized jobs to remove waste and uncertainty. But even that wasn't enough. The unsupervised worker could still work at his own speed. So Ford took one final famous step. He created the assembly line. By 1914, 3/4 of the Ford labor force was foreign and unskilled. Possible because they were now totally controlled.
One of the last barriers that Henry Ford succeeded in crossing was to get workers to work at the speed that he wanted them to work. And he did that through the assembly line. And that is part of a larger system, I guess we could call it, of materials handling within the factory.
Ford engineers arranged work in logical order, so materials and semi-completed parts mechanically made their way through the plant when they were needed. This meant that every worker was feeding the assembly line and had to keep up.
What he was doing is creating a progressive production system. The idea that work progressed from one point to another to another. I think the best analogy as to what's going on in the Ford factory, which is very, very different from other factories, is the analogy of, small streams and rivers all flowing into each other. The main assembly line essentially being the main river into which all the tributaries flow.